This is Carrie Rogers with Digital Respons-Ability. And for Media Literacy Week, which is this week, we are celebrating with this topic, why do we believe misinformation? We are going to be diving into everything from psychology to technology about why we share, why we believe, why we follow what we do. So it's a big topic. Let's dive in. This is something we teach in schools to K through 12. We teach adults, and we're happy to share this with you. I mentioned I'm Carrie. I'm a former librarian. I'm big into media literacy. It's something I did for years and years as a librarian, and I am passionate about the topic, and I am glad to see more interest and more awareness and more push for media literacy across multiple topics. I just was at the American Association of School Librarians conference last week and attended a little bit of a session on science literacy and talking about the lack of media literacy in science and how science communicates and how people interpret the science. Fascinating stuff. There's more awareness that media literacy needs to be in multiple subjects, not just English language arts, not just in library science, but it does affect the science, it affects technology, it affects, it's even in like even the hard sciences, chemistry and math, you'll find issues of media literacy. So big topic. Glad you're listening and part of this conversation. So this is the kind of the rundown of what we're going to talk about today. A little bit of that psychology. Why do we believe what we believe? We're going to go into tribalism, and then we're going to focus on conspiracy theories. How are we helping people out of rabbit holes and tech and conspiracy theories? So this is a quote, and I apologize for some of the formatting, is a quote is like to think of social media and media literacy in a social group context, because how we've been teaching media literacy is we go, hey kid, here's an article. This is how I was taught. I want you to read it and tell me about it. But we're not consuming information in a vacuum. We're consuming it with multiple, with friends cheering on other sides. If you have an article or a piece of information you see on your feed, you're not just seeing it by yourself, you're seeing it with comments. You're seeing it shared by a friend. You're seeing it on a specific platform or group or whatever it is. There's a social context with it. And there's that tribalism, which we're going to dive into more. But we have often taught media literacy and evaluating information by from an individual angle. But the research and the psychology, which we're going to dive into, talks about how we need to look at this in social context. Conspiracy theories, all misinformation, social context. Because we are not necessarily motivated by facts, and we're not stupid. And this is one of my pet peeves, is when talking about those that are believing conspiracy theories or fallen into misinformation, we maybe label or judge or use certain words that we shouldn't. So it's not always necessarily a lack of knowledge. It's about more like that tribalism, that sharing piece. So this is from a recent published study in Nature, that they'd give them headlines and they'd ask them and ask that were false. they were misleading headlines. Only 16% of them actually saw it as accurate. So the vast majority, with the headline and the information on this media piece, knew it was false. But even though they knew it was false, over half of them said they would still share it. So we're sharing this not because we're dumb, not because we necessarily have a lack of knowledge. For the most part, we're sharing it for that social reasons, to root for our team on the other side of the aisle there. People don't necessarily want to spread it. They're not necessarily malicious actors. Now, there are malicious actors out there. When we use the word disinformation, we're talking a lot about that, malicious actors, or sometimes propaganda can be a little more malicious actors that have bad intents. But when we talk about like misinformation, a lot of it is not bad intent. It's just, hey, I'm sharing this because it's important to me. My friends are. I believe in this subject. I like this commenter. I like this news person, and I'm sharing this based on other factors of how I feel that day or what's going on in my life. But we share based on context, not necessarily content. And part of the reason we share is because we are very social creatures. We're going to talk about tribes and fandoms here. There are many different types of tribes. And so I presented on this, I did a deep dive just in September to a bunch of teenagers out in Texas. And we talked about fandoms and tribes, and they all shared their fandoms as well. And I have mine as well, about how sometimes geek culture could be a pathway to misinformation or even disinformation. And this kind of culture, this geek fandom culture, you have these recognizable memes and images and characters and stories. We pay more attention to them. They grab our attention, and that can be great, right? Like, we have one reason some stories or things like Star Wars, for example, are so popular and have lasted multiple generations, because we identify with the characters and that hero's journey trope. We just get it. Like, you hear the story, and people across cultures or across languages can get these stories. And it's a beautiful thing, but it can sometimes be used by sometimes malicious actors or by non-malicious actors that can persuade people to believe things that aren't necessarily true. So here's just some examples of some fandoms. This is a popular meme that you see. If you ever follow the prequel memes, there are a lot of Star Wars prequel memes. It's just birthed this whole entire universe of it. And so you see this being used in public health. You've seen this meme used in a few different things, but I recognize the characters. I recognize the trope a little bit. So I'm going to pay attention to this, even if it is misinformation. And I'm more likely to share this meme than necessarily a peer-reviewed journal article. Here's another one that's been around for years. This is Marvel, Marvel and politics there. Two Spider-Men pointing at each other. Most people know who Spider-Man is. It's instantly recognizable. You get it. It's memeable. It's shareable. And so we share it, not thinking about necessarily the context or the content or any factual information or any of it. So if you're a fan of something, and so maybe that's Marvel or Star Wars or a video game series or an anime series or whatever it is, you're a member of the tribe. And when we are in this context, we're not like sitting back and saying, I wonder what Spider-Man's saying here. No, we're like, oh, that's funny. I like it. Let's share it. We don't think twice about it. Tribalism, this culture of, being together, having this identity, being part of something bigger than ourselves, that's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about, I think my friends will like this, not I think this is true. So I want to skip ahead here. Those are just some kind of examples of when we are part of a tribe, we interpret things through different lenses here. So this was from a 2019 study about satire, and where if we believe something is satirical or not, it's influenced by our tribe or our political tribe. That is another strong tribe that we're seeing a lot here. So my lens of this trolling, is this real, is this fake, is this a joke, is it a satire, is all through that lens, that tribalism there. Interestingly, and I wonder if we need to try this, is that the researchers found that labeling satirical content actually helped more than the content being flagged. I have seen this numerous times when I've looked at, misinformation and things, especially around vaccination. Some people who had their COVID vaccination content flagged on Facebook, for example, they actually were more likely to believe it, because if they're coming at it from a distrust of authority, they don't trust Facebook, they don't trust government, they don't trust any of that. And so their brains, instead of saying, oh, my content was flagged for inaccuracy, their brains go, wow, I'm on to the truth here. They're trying to cover it up. So actually labeling something satire helped a little bit more. And then we have to think this in mind too, as educators, if we are just fact checking, we're missing all of the social context, and it actually can backfire. Sometimes shrugging it off or making a joke can help more than saying that's false information. This happened to me one time in a classroom. were a kid, and I have to say, I'm not 100% convinced he wasn't trolling me, was talking about flat Earth, the flat Earth conspiracy theory. And so I just kind of like shrugged it off and made it a joke, and and like pointed to the window and said, "Oh, it looks pretty round out there," like, but not taking it so seriously. Instead of like saying like, "Oh, that's actually factually false." When you kind of label it as a satire or joke, you kind of diffuse a little bit of the situation, and we shrugged off and moved on. Another reason that we have these tribalisms, these fandoms, all of it is this concept of moral convictions here. That it's not just about a preference. A preference is like, I like something, but I can be swayed. But in some of these topics, like vaccination has got into some of those, people have literally died for their moral convictions. And they will stick with those moral convictions despite being fact checked, being told this, being told that. It's a strong, strong belief. And when you are talking to people who believe that strongly in something, fact checking definitely doesn't help. What helps is things of reminding them of their other identity groups. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to get people out of these rabbit holes when we talk about conspiracy theories. But there's a spectrum of belief, and there's like, oh, I like this, I prefer it, versus this is universally true. And if someone's on this side of the spectrum, it's really hard to redirect at a certain point. So here's some tips of if someone is down that rabbit hole, they're in the strong, strong moral conviction world. What do we do? What do we do as parents and educators here? This is from some research done in conspiracy theories, and there's some references at the end. In three big groups, why people believe conspiracy theories. Number one, finding a causal explanation. Two, to feel safe and secure. Three, and we've been talking about this during this presentation, is the social context, our tribes, our fandoms, whatever, to fit in with the group. So let's dive into all three of them, and then we're going to go into strategies of what we can do with that. So causal explanations. It is hard cognitively on our brain to believe in randomness. We all want to believe in karma or luck or good fortune or being hashtag blessed. It's comforting to have these stories and these narratives and these beliefs that A plus B always equals C. So we're seeking these causal explanations for events. Humans have always done this. We looked up in the sky and we made stories of why the stars were there, or a story about a river or a mountain or whatever. We were always trying to explain through stories and narratives our environment. It's just hardwired in our brain there. So everyone has this predisposition to try to find these causal explanations, but those who believe in conspiracy theories maybe have it a little more on hyperdrive, a little stronger reasons for wanting to do these causal explanations, because conspiracy theories explain everything. That's one thing. If you follow the QAnon conspiracy theory, they have an answer for everything. It's all one package, one group, everything is through that lens. I've been following the Going Clear Scientology documentary, and you see this over and over again with people who had left Scientology, is that Scientology had an answer for every single thing in your life, for every single event that happened. It not only understood the past, it understood the future. And listening to some of the interviews of people that were in it, it was very comforting to them until it wasn't, and it didn't fit anymore. So being patient, being empathetic, don't try to attack the whole entire theory. With these interviews of people who were in Scientology, it was often something that was smaller, like one brick in the building, not the entire brick, that got them to question. So, for example, one ex-member who had left it, that started questioning when he was an engineer and building other centers, Scientology centers, and he would go and visit them. and there was like no one in them and no one visiting, and they weren't being used at all. And so it was one brick, and then it was like, huh, why isn't anyone actually using this? Maybe it's not true. So, and that kind of led him to something else. So very specific beliefs or details of the theory are the way to address it. The second one is safety and security. We all want an explanation for things. We all want to believe things aren't necessarily random and there's purpose and meaning behind everything. It's natural. It's normal. It's normal to want to feel safe and secure. But people who feel particularly high anxiety or depression or some of these kind of things, they have more risk factors to being susceptible to some of this mis and disinformation there. So so looking at it in terms of, why does this person feel unsafe? Where is this coming from? What's the motivation? So has this person lost their job? Did they get sick? Did they have a breakup? All of those things can affect our safety and security, and addressing maybe those core issues to try to help the person is the way to a way to address it there. So other things on safety and security, and this is hard sometimes because when we get frustrated, we're like sharing the facts, we're trying to reach this person, you're talking to this person, like, nothing's getting through, I'm banging my head against the wall. But that actually can make it worse because they feel more defensive, they may feel more scared, they feel less safe. And so they go back to where they feel safe again, or they shut you off, or they won't listen to them. They go in their own bubble there because they are seeking this safety. They're seeking their tribe. They're seeking this belonging. And then they feel like their family members and friends are attacking them. And so they'll push and reject them away. And that's hard. That's hard stuff. So the third causal reason is, more on safety and security, also marginalized communities as well. If you feel like you have no say, you have no autonomy, you have no more control, you might go into conspiracy theories because it gives you a sense of control and autonomy. So you're already cut out. Maybe you were cut out. You didn't feel like, a kid didn't feel like they fit in at school. They didn't feel like they had a voice. They're going to seek that safety and security somewhere else. So we all want to fit in the group. These are natural, normal things that we want to do. But you have to be careful as well. You can't necessarily call out people publicly about their conspiratorial beliefs because they have a desire for safety, they have a desire to fit in, and if they feel more ostracized, they might go get more entrenched with the people they feel get them there. This is also quote, conspiracy belief is associated with narcissism, an inflated view of oneself that requires external validation, is linked to paranoid ideation. So these are vulnerable narcissists. They're insecure. They don't feel like they have a lot of control or things going on in their life. And so a conspiracy theory gives them like a higher sense of purpose. I know all the answers. Y'all didn't do your research here. I have the answers to all the questions. I know this stuff. Like it feels good to them. They want to fit in that group. They maybe feel a little insecure, a little less safe, a little less secure, and that helps them cognitively. People who are rejected or don't have those close family ties, they're the loner in the cafeteria, all of them have those more high risk factors there. If they're anxious, they also should be watched a little more closely. That doesn't mean a lot of people have anxiety and never, ever go down those roads. A lot of people are rejected and never, ever go down those rabbit holes. That just means it's a risk factor that you're more likely to, not necessarily that you are. But if there's a student in the class or there is a family or friend that has had a hard time lately, the pandemic exacerbated a lot of this because it did isolate people more and they were online more. So you saw a lot of the growth of QAnon and other conspiracy theories because there was more of that social isolation, and people are going to seek their social groups, they're going to seek those security, that safety wherever they can. And sometimes that's a natural, normal desire. But sometimes that natural, normal desire can be, twisted or taken advantage of and can lead people down those rabbit holes. Some other strategies for talking to someone who is down that rabbit hole. We mentioned like not judging, not labeling, not name calling, or they'll retrench because they want to feel safe and secure, but asking them to explain what it says. This is just good practice for being an educator. If you want to reinforce learning, you have the student explain the process, not the educator. And then as an educator, you can say, oh, well, they missed this step, or here's this. It'll help you be a little more empathetic. It might help you understand where they're coming from and the why of why they believe there, and that so you can address those specifics there. We talked about that one brick there. Going slow, being patient, and reminding them that this is not just who they are. There's they have all these relationships or jobs or hobbies or whatever it is, because this is an identity that they're wearing, and you can't just take away one identity without necessarily substituting it for another there too. So remind them of those other identities. And knowing yourself. So it's not because necessarily stupidity, it's the psychological need. So it's always helpful to ask, and we do this with students, like we ask them a lot of self-reflection questions, or when we're working with parents, it's like, how are you feeling? Do you understand your own biases or bubbles or whatever it is? What kind of content are you consuming? Having this degree of self-awareness and self-reflection is a protective factor against potentially going down those rabbit holes. Think about our own emotional responses, trying to visualize the other side. You know, sometimes things are random and things suck and there's no rhyme or reason for it, and that's hard. That's mentally hard on us. But recognizing what you can control and what you can't control can restore some of that sense of autonomy. I might not be able to control anything about this pandemic, but I can control my own health habits. Whatever you can do is maybe narrowing down that locus of control can also reduce that anxiety and help not to dive down those different holes. So this last section, we're going to talk about the intersection of technology and conspiracy theories. So to be clear, there's always been conspiracy theories. There was the Illuminati during the American Revolution. Every culture, every group, all of them have them. They're nothing new, because the desires, the things that create conspiracy theories about, you know, the desire for understanding the world and causal events, the desire to fit in with a social group, the desire to like understand the world and be part of something bigger. Those are all universal traits. So, and they are often things that can lead to that. So that's nothing new. But technology has made these theories spread much more far and wide. And a thing I want to mention starting off with is that they're big business. I thought this was satire until I looked into it a little bit more. Someone's selling tinfoil hats here. They're big business. So you have seen this a lot with the COVID pandemic. A number of different conspiracy theories have gone along with medical and health supplements. It is a huge industry, the medical and supplement industry. Now, to be clear, there are some good stuff out there, but you have to question if someone's peddling a conspiracy theory and also selling the solution to that theory. That seems to be some ill intent there. That could be some of that malicious intent, their desire for profit, not necessarily the desire to help there. You've seen there's a whole bunch out there. It's a whole ecosystem. I was walking around my neighborhood in the height of the pandemic, taking a walk, and saw a husband and wife with branded QAnon merchandise, Q t-shirts, earrings, the whole thing. So it's a business, and that's helpful for students to understand is what is the financial piece behind some of this. Who are the advertisers here? Where are they making their money? Do they have any financial reports posted? Who funded the website? Who's hosting the website? All of this, like follow the money, is a good way to kind of evaluate this. And there is big money in this, and some of the money can just be through followers or sponsorships or endorsers or all of it there. You got to question and follow the money. Now, this can be hard to find, but if there's nothing out there, then that could be a red flag too. So Another thing to think about is like gatekeepers, is that there's wonderful thing with the internet. It is kind of like democratize a lot of information, that more people have more venues to share and speak and communicate and all of that. That can be beautiful. There's been more opportunities for marginalized voices or different opinions or all this stuff. That's a great thing about the internet. It's also the not great thing about the internet. It goes both ways there too, is that old gatekeepers, when we talk about that, so that's governments, nonprofits, the traditional media, and now we have new gatekeepers, which are algorithms, and they have different motivations behind things. The government has certainly not been perfect, and there has been that a malicious intent here and there on things, but they have more motivation and they have more transparency than necessarily always an algorithm. And that's an issue with algorithms in general, is that even the people who create them don't really understand how they work, because it's machine learning. The algorithm is teaching itself. So how do you police that? How do you monitor that? How is that transparent? This is a big debate that's going on right now, on a congressional level with Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, YouTube, all of it is, how do we tweak these algorithms, because they have different goals and motivations than the older gatekeepers. Even experts can't always figure it out. And that is hard to regulate when even the people who made it doesn't know. It's easier maybe to regulate a media source that has more accountability, or maybe it has government funding, or it has other types of motivation than necessarily an algorithm does. Algorithms are not subject to regulation and checks and balances. They're copywritten intellectual property. You can't necessarily always look at them and see things there too. And an algorithm reinforces stronger feelings. Now, to be clear, the news media also reinforces stronger feelings. We have a huge negativity biases in our brains. We seek out that negative stuff. We want the sensational, we want the negativity, and that reinforces this engagement, this whole cycle that we're in. But they did have independent fact checkers. They did have more people working on it. You could see what the person said or wrote. You can't always see how this particular post or this got shared and that didn't. It's harder sometimes to see the mechanism behind the newer gatekeepers there. So this is a big topic that we're going to continue talking about with digital responsibility. We teach about algorithmic biases and everything to our kids and to our parents. It's all something that we need to be aware of. So my book came out in August, Fearless Digital Parenting. And when I wrote that book, I said this a few times, the thing that I am most concerned about as a parent is not cyberbullying, it is not some of that inappropriate content. It's around conspiracy theories and media literacy, because we have an algorithmic system, and we have also our own brains that are set up to kind of go down those holes, and that's harder. It's hard when someone has these moral convictions or believes so strongly to get them out. So that was my biggest chapter, and I said it right there in the book. But we can help you. It's tough out there as educators, as parents, all of it out there, to talk about these subjects, to understand these subjects, to teach these subjects. So we want to support you. Our next webinar that we're doing in-house is on cybersecurity with presenter Aaron Yeager. He's going to talk about everything in safety and security on November 9th, and you can register. And all of our monthly webinars like this one are free, and we appreciate you joining us. Here's some of our references that I mentioned about the black box, about some of the other sources that I mentioned as well. And I appreciate you joining, and please keep in touch and let us know how we can help you. Thank you.